Hello, everybody. On this Monday, October 31st, 2016, this is the Monday Morning Analyst. I am the host of this podcast, Luke Thomas, here on MMA Fighting. Thank you so much for watching. Today is Halloween, and I'm going as a middle-aged loser. Don't need much of a costume. But today, there is not any fight to talk about from the previous weekend. Now, there are some events this weekend in terms of MMA. There's some boxing too, but whatever. But there are some fights. We'll talk about that in the third segment, but I didn't want to not keep doing the podcast. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about UFC 205. We're going to break that down, and we're going to examine it in detail ahead of time. That's normally not what we do here, but I want to keep the podcast rolling in this off week. So to help me do that, former UFC lightweight contender, a guy who has been around the game, who's a great analyst. You've seen him on Fox Sports 1 for the UFC on Fox broadcast, Yves Edwards. I spoke to him earlier today, and he was amazing. We spoke for about 20 minutes or so. We got a breakdown from the ground to the striking to the cardio to the intangibles, and then, of course, we got his prediction at the end of that. So, without further ado, nothing to break down from the weekend. We'll talk to Yves and then look at what's coming up this next weekend, which, frankly, is actually going to be kind of busy. Let's do that now. Yves Edwards talking about UFC 205, Conor McGregor versus Eddie Alvarez. All right, I'm joined now by former UFC lightweight contender and current Fox analyst, Yves Edwards. Yves, thank you so much for joining me. Let's just get right into it. UFC 205, headlined by Conor McGregor taking on Eddie Alvarez. A number of different ways to look at this, but I really want to get your technical mind. I've seen you on Fox. I saw you on the Joe Rogan podcast. And, of course, you are a lightweight, and I can think of no one else better to do this. So let's sort of start from an overview perspective. What kind of fight are you expecting between these two?
Ooh, that's a good question. It all depends on who takes charge and who's in control of the fight. If Eddie can implement his game plan or impose his will, I think it's going to be a fight. It's just going to be that. It's going to be who's smarter in these exchanges, who's tougher when these exchanges are done, and who wants to get back in there and do it again. If Conor was his will, I think it's going to be a lot of, I'm going to stay on the outside, I'm going to touch you every time I can, not let you get to anything. His counter the game is he likes to counter. He counters very well. And he wants to stay on the outside and use that range and reach that he has. He's a lot longer than he looks, I feel, especially when you get in there and you mix it up with him. So those are the two fights that I see that could happen. But ultimately, I don't know who's going to impose their will. I mean, I've seen so many things out of both of these guys, and Conor really stepped up in that second fight with Nate. So I can't tell you who's going to be able to show what they have the most on fight night.
Let's talk about Conor McGregor for just a second. Let's sort of break down his game a little bit. It looks to me, and of course, this is a limited summation of his game, but let's talk about the way in which he strikes. He's not like a Frankie Edgar type who is constantly in motion. He's the kind of guy who sort of sits there and does these real quick sort of boxing-esque slips and then counters. He doesn't have a ton of motion. What do you make about that? Is that one to preserve his cardio, or is there something else to be said about that? Like, guys who choose that kind of striking, why do they do that? What does it say about them?
I think it says he's pretty patient. I think he's very analytical. Conor is the kind of guy that looks that gives you attacks and tries to read your reactions and this it's like he did with Jose Aldo. He's drilling the exact technique that he finishes the fight with in the locker room before the fight. It's that type of thing. I think he's a very high fight IQ. He can pick up on tendencies and which your natural instincts are, and try to take advantage of that. I think he's also he thinks quickly when it comes to that type of thing. I think he can react in a fight to what you're doing and make up for something that he hadn't prepared for when it comes down to it. I give him a lot of credit, man. The guy's done some amazing things, and you can't do that without a high level of talent. Besides all the running of the mouth that he does, he deserves everything he's gotten.
That left hand is obviously a big weapon of his. When you look at his game from a striking standpoint, what other weapons do you see?
Definitely that left hand. He's got some. He packs a good punch, you know. But I think the biggest part of his game, the most dangerous part of his game, is him on his feet. I haven't seen a whole lot of him on his back, but he is confident there. He's not uncomfortable. He doesn't panic. I mean, Chad Mendes is on top of you. He's not freaking out. He's doing the things that he needs to do to kind of slow down the wrestling game of Chad Mendes and not take a whole lot of damage. I'm sure he knew that conditioning could play a factor in that fight, and getting the fight to go a little bit longer would be better for him. So tying Chad up and trying to control him on the ground, make him expend a little more energy, I think those types of things, just the mind that he has, things that he can do in a fight when you think really he can't. I really didn't expect him to do those types of things with even with Chad Mendes. Didn't expect him to take Jose Aldo out in such a fashion. I think his biggest weapon when it comes to fighting is his mind, but that's when you get to that level of fighting, when you get to the highest level of fighting, which is the UFC, and then you get to the elite status of that brand. It's a thinking man's game, and the smartest guy is going to win 9 out of 10 times. And I think that's his biggest weapon. Is he's pretty intelligent when it comes to a fight.
What do you make of his power? Like, obviously, we've seen what he can do to Dustin Poirier. We've seen what he can do to Jose Aldo. And he was hurting Nate Diaz. Like, no one is questioning that he can hit hard. But I guess what I mean is, at 155, it's different, the guys in UFC, than it is in Cage Warriors, even though he fought at 155 back then. What do you make of what you I mean, we're all just guessing, but what is his power going to do to Eddie Alvarez? Can it really stun and finish him off in the ways that he's finished other guys in the UFC?
Yeah, I mean, he has the power to finish anybody. I'm sure if he hits 170, 185 pounder with the right shot that he doesn't see, he can take those guys out too. It's just getting to that position and landing it. But that's not a special thing about Conor McGregor. I think the same thing of Eddie Alvarez, Dustin Poirier, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Michael Johnson, all these guys. They have the power to hurt you if they hit you. What I do like about Connor's style is he's pretty accurate. He's very accurate when it comes to striking. I mean, he puts the nail right on. He hits the nail right on the head. If he's throwing shots to your face, he's usually throwing those to the chin. They're not just to hit you in the face, bust up your nose, hit you in the eye. No, when you look at his knockout shots, it looks. I mean, they're very accurate. They all go to the chin, and I just think that's the biggest danger of his accuracy. I think Eddie's going to give him a lot of footwork, and Eddie is very smart when it comes to boxing. I mean, he comes out of Philly, so that's kind of in his DNA. So this really is a fight that I'm looking forward to. I think this is the best fight to main event that card, that is on that card, because of that aspect of it. Madison Square Garden, Conor McGregor is this Irish kid who has very good boxing talent. And Eddie Alvarez, this Spanish American kid who also has good boxing from a boxing town. So I think with Conor, the accuracy is a big deal. The power, yeah, that matters, but you're not knocking out anything you can't hit, and that accuracy helps with that power also.
Let's talk a little bit about Conor McGregor's cardio, and then I do want to get into Eddie Alvarez here after that. But Conor McGregor's cardio, it's interesting. He didn't obviously look all that great against Nate Diaz, but in the rematch, when I thought he was fading after that third round, in that fourth round, everyone saw it. He showed a tremendous amount of just will to come back, and it was a very scientific plan that he had from the outright. So here's my thought. My thought is, do I think he has super impressive, awesome cardio? Probably not, but I don't know that it's fair to say that he has bad cardio. Where are you on that debate?
I don't see any issues with his cardio. The fight with Nate, the second fight will show you that he has the cardio to go 5 rounds. He looked good all 5 rounds. He was strong where you expected him to be, and he never really. Of course, during a 25-minute fight, there are times when you're going to need a breather, and maybe your opponent can try to take advantage of that. So I'm sure those moments did exist. I feel like I can see some of them in my head when I think about it to remember it. But he never showed me that 25 minutes could be too much for him. I think the Nate fight, and the first one particularly, it wasn't an issue of cardio. It was an issue of it being tougher than anything he's been in the UFC. I've seen that happen to a lot of guys. I know the experience. When you're destroying everybody, and then all of a sudden things get a little bit tough, and it's not as easy as you expected it to be. For a minute, you can have a lapse right there, and I think that's what happened with Conor, because he showed me that he bounced back from that in the second fight with Nate. In the first fight with Nate, he got hurt. He took a shot. It wasn't working out for him. He gave up his back, and he kind of just gave up the choke. The second fight, he got hurt, but he didn't run away from it. He knew what he got himself into, and he persevered and he came through. So I thought for those two fights, and what I really see from Conor, I think it's more of a heart issue, and he showed that he can bounce back and that he has the heart. And I think he's going to need that with a guy like Eddie if he gets deep. But I don't think cardio is an issue for him.
So let's talk now about Eddie Alvarez. I mean, one of the reasons you have to just be so praiseworthy of Conor McGregor is that he's jumping up in weight against a guy who Eddie Alvarez beat the former lightweight champ. He obviously beat the previous one in Anthony Pettis. He beat Gilbert Melendez, the former Strikeforce champ. He was the Bellator champ. I mean, Eddie Alvarez is a no bull S all-time great lightweight. When you evaluate the totality of Eddie Alvarez's game, what do you say about it, Yves?
Eddie Alvarez has a pretty complete game, man. He's one of these guys that came up in the last generation of fighters that did this solely because there was a passion for it. Nowadays, there's some guys out there. Yeah, there are guys that are passionate about it. They're still passionate for the fight game. There always will be. But there's a lot of guys that get into this sport now for because it's a popular thing. There's money involved, and there are some benefits that you can see from it. But Eddie is one of those guys, like Joe Lozon, like myself, these guys that started because the UFC was an underground thing. And because of that, he has that heart, he has that desire. He's one of these guys that you can't break, and that's why he's been a champion, and he's beaten these champions all over the place. I have a lot of respect for Eddie. I have a lot of love for Eddie. This fight is really exciting for me because of the grandiose of Madison Square Garden, of New York City, of so many fights that I've seen there. I've seen Felix Trinidad fight in Madison Square Garden. I've seen Oscar De La Hoya, and now we get to see like some of the best MMA fighters fight there. So I'm excited about this, and Eddie is just one of those guys that I can't do anything but sing praises for him. He's one of these guys he's tough. He never quits. He will always be in the fight. You are not going to take him out. You can't break Eddie Alvarez, and that's the biggest deal for me. He's one of these guys that's truly unbreakable.
Michael Chandler pushed him to the limits, obviously, in not one but two occasions. But to your point, he is incredibly tough and durable. Here's what I wonder, though. We mentioned before the striking of Conor McGregor is super accurate. We have seen Eddie Alvarez. I don't know what to say about it. On the one hand, you see him get rocked, and then he comes back. Okay, that speaks to his tenacity and his skill. But on the same hand, he's getting rocked early. What do you make of that as a liability as he faces someone, as you mentioned, with big power and great accuracy in Conor McGregor?
Yeah, that's definitely a liability when it comes to that part of the game. But Conor isn't. I don't think he's the most powerful guy that Eddie's fought, and he's possibly not the most accurate. Now, he may have the highest rating in both those skills combined of anybody that Eddie's fought, but individually, those things don't really stand out I don't see them as a threat. Eddie's a smart fighter. He's got great guys around him. He's studying tape. He's preparing. I'm sure he's preparing properly. I don't think that Conor's going to be able to surprise him. I don't think there's anything that's going to happen that's like Eddie's going to kind of be afraid because of it. If he is surprised, I think he'll make an adjustment and they'll go on from there. I'm not saying that means he's going to win the fight, but yeah, with the power that Conor has, he has to be a smart fighter about it, and that's the thing. Eddie is a smart fighter. He's a world champion in one of the, if not the toughest division in the world. So you've got to be intelligent to do that. You can't the lightweight division, the welterweight division, the 145-pound division, and 135. You cannot become the champion of those divisions with just straight toughness. You've got to have some high level of fight IQ, and I think because of that, he's not at a disadvantage when it comes to the fight with Conor.
What about the idea that like some level of wrestling should be you don't have to make this a wrestling contest, but it's probably fair to say that while McGregor's wrestling is a little bit underrated, or that people kind of give him too much guff for it, Eddie probably is a little bit better of a wrestler. I don't think that's too crazy to say. And if you can slow a guy down like McGregor, who relies on those quick, explosive movements, you can really make it easier to strike with him later. And that's true for everyone, but I feel like it's especially true for, again, someone with the striking style of Conor McGregor. Do you share that analysis, or am I way off on that?
I would think that wrestling would definitely change the game. It absolutely does. And Eddie is by far a better wrestler than Conor McGregor. Eddie's takedown defense is superb, and his offensive wrestling is no joke either. Conor's wrestling is not horrible, but I just don't think it's on the level of Eddie Alvarez. Now, is Eddie going to be able to use that to alter Conor's stance, to make him a little more tentative about throwing shots because the threat of the takedown is there? I don't doubt it at all. I think Eddie is, like I said, he's a smart fighter. He's got great coaches around him, Mark Henry, Ricardo Almeida, and those guys. And I am positive that they're going to implement his full arsenal in their game plan to take out Conor McGregor. By shooting takedowns, he can get Conor's hands to come down. He can add more feints to his game. He's going to have more options. And with his takedown defense being as high as it is, and Conor's wrestling not being at that same level, I think Eddie's going to be a little more. He has the opportunity to be a little more open. He can release some of those weapons a lot quicker or a lot more often than Conor can, with less concern about the takedown, because Conor's wrestling isn't that high level and his takedown defense is so much so. So I think that's a big advantage for Eddie going into this one.
Let's talk a little bit more about the striking, if we can, about Eddie Alvarez here. From my vantage point, we've mentioned that Conor is really accurate, and I don't think anyone would disagree. I definitely feel like of the two, in fact, he is more accurate. What did you see from Eddie Alvarez in terms of winning the lightweight title from Rafael dos Anjos that speaks to his accuracy? It seems like he's a little bit more of a volume attacker, but I'm wondering from your eagle eye what you caught there.
Yeah, Eddie will turn on a lot of volume, but I think what a lot of people miss, especially in that fight with Rafael dos Anjos, is how Eddie made a couple of adjustments. Eddie threw that looping right hand a few times, and every time that he threw it and it was blocked, RDA was able to get his left hand up and protect it by covering himself with his hand, not by parrying it or getting out of the way. He blocked it with his hand, and with those little gloves, that's a dangerous feat to be attempted to do. When Eddie did stun him, it was with the same punch out of a combination. He put the jab in front of it. He got RDA to lose sight of him by looking away. He threw that looping right hand around and came around the guard this time and was able to land it on the chin. It's going to be hard to see if you're not really paying attention. You may have to slow the tape down. But when you see that, he throws that right hand and he hits him around. He goes around that guard, hits him in the chin, and he stuns him. Then he turned on the volume. I mean, he went all in at that point. But Eddie, the thing I take from that is Eddie's the kind of guy that does make these adjustments in fights. He looks at what you're giving him. I throw this punch. This is what the defense you're using. And he threw that punch a few times. So I think what he did with that punch was paint a target. He painted the target, kind of found out exactly what openings he had behind that punch, and just altered the angle of that punch to land the shot that he did that started the beginning of the end for Dos Anjos. And I think that option and having that skill set is something that he's going to go. You need to be able to use in this fight. But Conor also has that skill set. He showed that in his fight with Jose Aldo. He saw what Jose was going to do. He called it. He even called it out. I mean, that's kind of Babe Ruthish, right? To call your knockout shot. So I'm really looking forward to the kinetic chess match that these two guys are that this fight is going to be because of these guys.
Before we let you go here, just a couple more questions, and I appreciate your time. We haven't mentioned much about the ground, I think in part because a lot of us don't know how much of the fight's going to be there, But let's just say this: we both agree that Eddie's a better wrestler, and he's also a really good scrambler too. When Michael Chandler would get his back or a dominant position, he'd be able to get back to his feet in ways that were obviously good for him. But you know what? Conor McGregor is, I don't know if he's the world's best scrambler, but like you mentioned before, he's really patient, and his timing and finding openings to get back to the top are really, really good. Just quickly, if you can, speak to how you think they might pair up on the ground, being as speculative, of course, as we can be.
I really think that Eddie's going to have the advantage on the ground. If the fight does make it to the mat, I would expect Eddie to be on top, and I don't think he's not going to have the same issues that Chad Mendes had. I mean, Mendes took the fight on short notice. Eddie's had weeks to prepare for this fight. He's also a mixed martial artist. He is not so concerned with keeping you on your back when he gets you there. I think Mendes, just from his wrestling background, when he gets to the takedown, he kind of wants to control from there. And yeah, if he has an opportunity to keep you there, he's going to force the issue. Eddie, I think if Conor starts to create a scramble and Eddie doesn't like where the scramble is going, he doesn't mind bailing and getting back to his feet because he's completely comfortable there also. So I think the ground is going to be an advantage for Eddie, but Conor's also confident there. We saw him fight his fight with Max Holloway. He was injured. I think he was injured going into that fight, but he was able to put on a show on the mat. But I don't know if Max Holloway's ground game, especially at that point, was anywhere near what Eddie Alvarez has. Eddie's been in the game for a long time. He has a whole lot of experience. So I think that may be an advantage for him. But we don't know where the fight's going to play out. We'll see, though.
All right, Yves. I mean, this is game time. Which way are you leaning on this one for UFC 205?
Oh, man, this is a really hard fight to call because Conor showed me so much, and especially in his comeback fight against Nate. But I'm old school. I love Eddie Alvarez. I've been a fan of his since he was fighting on undercards that I was fighting on early in his career. And he is one of those guys that is special in my eyes. I want to see him do well, so I'm picking Eddie. I'm rooting for Eddie. I'm picking Eddie, and I'm also rooting for Eddie in this one.
There you have it. Yves Edwards, thank you so much for this. I really appreciate your time, and we'll plug your Twitter and everything on the podcast. And enjoy UFC 205. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Okay, big thanks to Yves Edwards for tremendous insight. Really appreciate that. Okay, guys, so what is coming up this week? It's been a long break, has it not? It has. It has certainly been a lot. There will be 2 events this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. There's a Bellator event, of course, and then there is a UFC event. Let's look at that Bellator event real quickly if we can. Bellator 163. This will be Friday night. McGeary versus Davis at the Mohegan Sun Arena in Uncasville, Connecticut. McGeary defending his title against Phil Davis in the main event. Marlus Kunin is back in action against Talita Nogueira. Brendan Ward versus Saad Awad. That should be a very short fight, I suspect. Paul Daly is back in action against Derek Anderson. And then Sergey Haratonov will open things up against Javi Ayala. Also on that card of note, this will not be on the Spike card. This will be on the Spike.com prelim card, but it's worth paying attention to. You know, I never say that for Bellator cards. 2 names to pay attention to. Number 1, literally one of the greatest collegiate wrestlers ever. Talking top 10. Ed Ruth is going to make his debut against Mark Mangiardi. I don't know who the other gentleman is. Ed Ruth is a no bull S, top of the food chain blue chip prospect. We are talking about an all-time great in college, and he is making his debut on this card. Do not miss that one. Another guy, a big-time Division II wrestling stand-up, but of course had won some University Wrestling titles, University World Wrestling titles, and everything else. Tyrell Fortune is going to make his debut as well against Cody Mescal. I don't know who these gentlemen are, but the other 2 I do. Tyrell Fortune I had on my show. Ed Ruth as well. These are ones not to miss. I'm telling you. One of those 2, if not both, are going to be something special in this sport. Then the next day, here we go. UFC is finally back in action, and this card is tremendous. The finale for the Ultimate Fighter Latin America 3. Now, it's going to be on Fox Sports 1, which means it's going to end at 5 in the morning for no particular reason other than Fox Sports 1 hates its audience. Not really. Okay, in the main event, Rafael dos Anjos versus Tony Ferguson. Whoa, what a great fight that's going to be. Martin Bravo versus Claudio Puelles. I'm assuming these gentlemen are from the show. Diego Sanchez taking on former Bellator leg lock specialist Marcin Held. That should be a really good fight. Ricardo Lamas versus Charles Oliveira. Beneil Dariush versus Rashid Magomedov. And then Alexa Grasso makes her UFC debut against Heather Jo Clark. Also on that card, which will also be on Fox Sports 1, Eric Perez versus Felipe Aranches. Marco Beltran versus, says TBA. Eric Montano versus Max Griffin. Henry Briones versus Douglas Silva de Andrade. And then on Fight Pass, Sam Alvey versus Alex Nicholson. That was supposed to be on that Manila card. It was moved. Marco Polo Reyes versus Jason Novelli. And then Enrique Barzola versus Chris Avila. Okay, so some fights on the bottom of the card, not that great. But overall on the weekend, got some great fights coming up. Really looking forward to it. So, I'm going to be in New York literally from Sunday to Sunday next week. It's going to be a long week for me. But if you see me out there, say hi. If you got any questions, email me at luke.thomas@sbnation.com. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much to Yves Edwards for sharing his tremendous insight. Of course, we appreciate that here at the Monday Morning Analyst. Guys, like this video, share it to everyone you know. Be a good person. I always appreciate it when you do. Until next week and next time, enjoy the fights.